Hello and welcome back to ForgeTalks. It feels like it's been an age. My orange tree has literally doubled in size since the last time I saw you. Guys, really exciting episode for you today. I'm joined again by two guests, both of whom have been on ForgeTalks before. One was literally on like a week ago. Eve, you just can't get enough of the ForgeTalks, right?
I love to join you here. Hi, Fraser. How are you?
Good, thank you. And I'm also joined by Tommy. Tommy, great to have you back, my friend.
Oh, thanks, Fraser. Great to be back.
So, in case you guys have missed it, I'm not entirely sure how you could have missed it, but we recently released our breach report for the third year in a row, I believe.
Yep.
And guys, yeah, that is right, yeah. In addition to being just a real page turner, there is a ton of amazing and really interesting, some slightly shocking stats in there. And so I'm really pleased to welcome the guys back, and we're gonna talk a little bit about it. So I wonder, Eve, if you could just start by giving us the overarching themes of this year's breach report.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're really talking about the great digital migration. In case you hadn't noticed, there was kind of a pandemic going on. Yeah, and people were spending a lot of time online. I know you were living in a cave, Fraser, but people more than doubled their time online last year. And so, yeah, they were spending more than 7 hours a day online. I know I kind of spent more time online. And this ForgeRock Consumer Identity Breach Report mapped out people's kind of migratory formations, including by bad guys. And so since this was the third consecutive year of the report, this allows us to see some trends, and some of them indeed were pretty shocking.
Right.
So some of the standout stats from the report. One of them was that attacks that used usernames and passwords, so that's using the usernames and passwords to achieve a breach, to achieve the attack, those were up 450%. Like, wowza. And so another one was that the top breach type was unauthorized access. So partly that was because people were, leveraging usernames and passwords. So that was the top breach type, third year in a row, and that is now at 43% of breaches.
Wow.
So yeah, that's kind of significant.
It's not ideal.
And actually, the second breach type was the second most, I guess, popular, you could say, breach type. And it's not, not popular with us, but popular with the bad guys, was phishing. So, fooling people. And that was at 19%. And that had previously been at, I think, 14%. So, what does that really mean? It means that the pernicious effects of the most insecure authentication method in the world is being used against us. And that's usernames and passwords. They're killing us.
That's crazy. So obviously breaches on the rise, username, like identity is obviously very central to this. Like, what does it mean? What does this mean for the industry? What does it mean for businesses? What does this trend kind of predict, I guess?
Well, one of the things that we found was that the breach situation is getting worse, and it's getting worse in a kind of a subtle way. We found that these bad guys, the malicious actors, they're kind of migrating, if you will, towards smaller enterprises. So we found that the mega breaches, which we're defining as over 100 million records at a time breached, were declining. But, smaller breaches, fewer than 100 million records, that's still really quite significant. Those increased 50%. So you might think, well, I'm kind of under the radar as an enterprise with fewer than 100 million records. I can achieve security through obscurity. Don't think so. You really got to protect yourself. And so that really means that the bad actors are kind of spreading themselves around, and their methods are increasing in sophistication. So everybody's really got to protect themselves thoroughly and with the same sophistication, essentially. And this is where we see zero trust coming to the fore. It's so very popular now, zero trust.
I guess to that point, your previous point about smaller breaches, actually with COVID-19 and the increase in number of people being, digitally active, actually more people have like more online accounts, right? Someone who you wouldn't typically have an online account with like pre-lockdown, you now do have an account with. So actually there are way more companies with, under 100 million. Yeah, that's crazy.
And more consumers with more accounts at more places and, more risk of feeling that attack themselves personally. Absolutely.
So, okay, to take a little bit of a pivot now. So with all of these trends that we're seeing, even across the pond, I heard about the executive order that came into effect in the US. Tommy, do you want to just give us a little overview? What is that executive order?
Yeah, thanks, Fraser. So as you look at the U.S. federal government, they really are taking cybersecurity more seriously just due to all the different breaches across federal agencies, our infrastructure. So the U.S. federal government, via the White House, released an executive order from President Biden, basically on improving the nation's cybersecurity. That executive order was released on May the 11th of this year. And there are 11 sections in that executive order. Well, some areas are focusing on policy. Agencies have to report back to the federal government that they adhere to a certain policy. A big section is around modernization of the cybersecurity tools. Some of the agencies have legacy applications, legacy tools, and so this executive order calls out that modernization of those tools. Also, a big piece of this is around software supply chain security, as well as improving cybersecurity detection. So this executive order really gives a roadmap for the federal agencies to get their act together, get moving on modernizing their cybersecurity.
And so, like, I know you've gone into it a bit, but what kind of implications does it have? And I guess, is it reflective of like a growing trend within governments worldwide to be a bit more, active and responsible and on top of their cybersecurity?
Oh, absolutely. Not only does it have implications across all of the federal civilian executive branch agencies, that will trickle down to infrastructure agencies, utilities, all kinds of infrastructure companies as well. As it pertains to an independent software vendor like ForgeTalks, there are two main sections that we focus on. One is enhancing our software, and the GSA will send out a list later this month to look at how software vendors can adhere to certain controls around supply chain security. The second piece is really around that section of modernizing the federal government cybersecurity tools. As Eve mentioned, it actually calls out zero trust. It also mentions multi-factor authentication. And as ForgeTalks, as we look at that, we've always been at the forefront of offering multi-factor authentication tools. In fact, it's really around choice. Typically, a federal agency may have a smart card or a common access card in the Department of Defense or a PIV card in the agencies. Agencies are now looking for choice. They want to be able to offer a one-time password or FIDO. They want to get rid of passwords. So agencies are really looking at various ways to provide multi-factor because of the pandemic, because of work from home, because not everyone is a central office. They have to expand their ability to offer multi-factor to a variety of different use cases, not only for their employees, but also their citizen-facing services.
So, I mean, this is maybe just me being a little uneducated in this area, but I feel like there's kind of an expectation for something like a government agency to have really clunky, very, very like secure, like it takes a day to access things. It's almost like, because it's so important, because it's a government agency, it has to be like really impossible to access almost. But actually what we're seeing more and more at ForgeTalks is that and this is a big thing that we harp on about, you don't have to compromise between incredible security and amazing experiences. So actually it's not a requirement anymore for these government agencies to have these horrible, clunky, security systems. Is that kind of what you're seeing, Tommy?
Oh, no, absolutely. We as not only citizens, but as we look at around applications that the governments are offering us as citizens, that we're now accessing them from our mobile device. We have to access them on a fly. We have to get more data all more and more. It used to be just you accessed an application with a username and password, and you logged in, and that was it. Now you're getting access to vital information that is now online. And so as you look at that, you have to provide that extra layer of cybersecurity in order to reduce that number of breaches. Because here in the U.S., we really want our federal government as well as our state governments to provide the best security as possible, because we're accessing services that in the past we didn't have access to get that data online. So it has definitely changed in the last 12 months.
So I guess in addition to potentially making the identity experiences a little bit better and easier for the consumers and for the government agencies, it's also about reducing the number of breaches, right?
It's about reducing the number of breaches. It's actually about a lot more, right? Because data protection it's sort of a multifaceted thing. Sort of in cybersecurity, you talk about protecting data at rest, protecting data in motion, and also protecting data in use increasingly. So it's really that's really all the facets that you can think of. So it's protecting against breaches, protecting against injecting code that shouldn't be there. I mean, that's what the ransomware story is really kind of partly about. So you really want to protect against unauthorized access against software that's sitting there. And there's all kinds of ways in which you can protect against breaches, in a kind of supply chain fashion. And so Zero Trust is about that story. It's about drawing the protection very close to the resources in many different ways, and not trusting any one user or any one device. And it's about protecting that blast radius if something really does go wrong, so it doesn't sort of infect a whole bunch of other different things. So Zero Trust is itself a many-faceted thing. It's very, very clever architecture. And I was actually very pleased to see the White House Cybersecurity Executive Order, because it's a very sophisticated architecture. And there's a lot of ways in which identity and access management can actually provide lots and lots of tools to help you achieve Zero Trust.
Okay, so how then does ForgeRock fit into this story?
Oh, so many ways. First and foremost, Tommy mentioned kind of achieving multi-factor authentication and passwordless. Passwordless is this big word right now. And actually, we've had this offering called ForgeRock Go for some time now. And that actually packages up ways to go passwordless and achieve what I've started to call a strong yet beautiful authentication experience.
Love it.
In a bunch of different ways, actually. So, I mean, Tommy mentioned FIDO. So FIDO2 WebAuthn is this kind of new standard that's been starting to be baked into browsers and baked into a lot of different authenticator kind of hard tokens that enables a standardized way to achieve many different journeys that achieve an equivalent level of authentication assurance, the same authentication assurance level, so that an administrator or even a user could state their preferences for a particular authentication experience or level, and then you can just achieve it through different experiences, methods. And it's just so powerful. It's amazing. Like, the world has really gotten to a new level of maturity and sophistication around this. And ForgeRock Go has been providing this for, over a year now. So people can, go and get this now and start achieving this great experience that's also strong. So that's one big way. But there's many other ways. So just for an example, if you would like to apply artificial intelligence and machine learning to the wonderful natural human intelligences in your organization, you can actually do it and achieve stronger governance and administration, identity governance and administration, thereby recognizing the fact that, my colleague Peter Barker likes to say, we don't have organizations anymore, we have organisms, which I love, because it's like, your org chart is constantly changing. I mean, we certainly know that ourselves. And, I'm sure many folks out there are going, gosh, somebody's title just changed and their roles are constantly changing. And somebody just left the company. Now ask yourself, how many applications still think they're still employed and have a particular role? That's exactly where you start worrying about these sort of insider attacks. And that is precisely where you need that kind of artificial intelligence view that says people like you have this many entitlements, and these entitlements, what would you like to do with this new person or this person who moved roles or something like that? So this is where our autonomous identity offering actually applies artificial intelligence to the proposition, with what the AI people will call explainability, which means it's kind of a recommendation engine approach. It says, we're giving you this view over what kind of entitlements might be appropriate based on other people like them, like you, who have these entitlements. So that gives you a kind of sense of confidence at what you're looking at. So these are the kinds of tools that we're offering to give a sense of confidence that the access controls are correct instead of incorrect, which is how some of these folks have gotten into a bad pickle.
Well, yeah, amazing. Guys, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk us through all this. Now, I'm curious, if people are interested, where can they go for more information on all of this stuff that we've talked about?
Pretty easy, forgerock.com. There's lots of resources there. The Consumer Identity Breach Report can be found there. There's a great infographic where you can just grab a few numbers, impress your friends, do party tricks.
These great parties. Now we're all getting back to normal. All we do at these parties is compare breach statistics.
We know how to have all the good fun.
Well, that's awesome. Well, guys, hopefully there's some links on screen for you now where you can check all of that out. But otherwise, I'll just say thank you, Eve. Thank you, Tommy, so much for joining me today.
It's a great pleasure, as always.
No, thank you, Fraser. We're looking forward to you coming over across the pond one day.
I can't wait.
Hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yep, fingers crossed. And guys, hopefully you enjoyed that episode, and we will see you next time.